Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain. What's up?
That's right. It's a beautiful Wednesday morning from here in Lagos. I'm Kayode Okikulu.
I thought you were going to use a new word today. Amaya Makene, good morning and welcome.
New one.
What's wrong with beautiful? It's beautiful, it's beautiful. Well, it's also beautiful here in Abuja. Good morning, I'm Mawkwe Yusuf.
Well, Mawkwe, I'm going to throw this back to you because I don't know how beautiful the experience was yesterday.
Which of them? What's going on here?
We learned yesterday. I don't know, what has happened, and how come it is. I don't know if other parts of the country are experiencing it, but a lot of Abuja residents woke up to the fact that there was a few queues. Again, the few queues had resurfaced in the Federal Capital Territory. And I think a lot of people just decided to buy wherever it was that they could see to buy. And sadly, Australia was caught in the web yesterday. Some 4.5 hours just trying to get this very, precious commodity, it will seem now. But there are lots of lessons to be learned. And I think that, when we listen to the report, we will have an idea of, just what happens when, there's a bit of scarcity. You have to find out what the root is. We understand that, because a few days ago, the NNPC had addressed Nigerians to say, hey, don't panic. The fuel price is not going to change. They had told marketers, if you're not going to be in with us, sorry, we're not changing the price. It's still the same price. Don't forget that it will seem that on a monthly basis now, we need monthly assurances. So you hear no price increase for the month of March. Well, April got its own announcement yesterday. No price increase for the month of April. Now, we don't know if that assurance is going to last into May. But the NNPC has also said that the burden of, this petrol subsidy, which is now having to do, is unsustainable. In other words, prepare for a price increase, but they keep giving the assurance every month that it's not now. So when we saw the few queues, we were wondering what is going on. Is this, saying one thing and then the reality on the ground is something else? It turned out that there was a strike. Or an impending strike. Well, they had already started a strike by petrol tankers, tanker drivers who were saying, look, they need 1 naira on every liter of petrol being lifted, and that they had to reach some sort of agreement with the NNPC on that. So according to the NNPC MD, they had started talks on that and they had reached some resolution. But from what we understand, there's a 1-week ultimatum or a 1-week period in between to see whether what they have achieved is going to work. So we'll wait and see. But in the meantime, the few queues are still there. On my way to work this morning, I still saw the queues. They were there. Yesterday, it was quite an interesting lesson. The thing that stuck out for me is the level of service which we have come to accept. And I think that, at some point, we need to stop being docile as a people, because sometimes your problem might be localized. It might be that the arrangement in the filling station where you're queuing up is what is actually punishing you, not necessarily because there is a scarcity. So sometimes people need to just learn to speak up. Speak up for yourself and speak up for others. Find out what is going on. Let us not just sit pretty and accept whatever service is being given us, because the moment you're able to voice out, you never can tell what changes you might be able to make to other people around you. And I think that was my own experience yesterday. Yes, it cost me, yes, it was a cost, 4.5 hours before getting that precious commodity. But I was happy at the end of the day that, whatever service I got wasn't just for my own benefit, it was also for the benefit of those around me. Gentlemen.
It's when I caught that story, I mean, I was shocked because the next thing that came to my mind was, wait a minute, it's either Lagos or Abuja, and once it happens in one of those, it's almost sure that it's going to spread to other parts of the country. And that is for, petroleum products. How about other products? I mean, for instance, just a small group of people went on strike in Abuja and see the reverberating effect. One of the people who responded, hopefully we'll be able to see it, said that he'd been in that queue since 7 a.m. and about the time he was being spoken with by our reporter, it was 2 p.m. This is avoidable, isn't it?
Oh, yes, and I can go on and on about how we don't deserve to be going through this as a country. We have too much. For crying out loud, we explore crude oil right here in Nigeria. We have vast, well, even though that's debatable, because some say that in a few years we might not have that vast, resource or storage, and quote, of crude oil. But, you understand what I'm saying. We have vast... 2 million barrels per day, that is huge. We should be swimming, as it were, in petrol. I saw some visuals about a certain place where you get petrol free of charge because, they have crude oil there. But, we're not even asking for that yet. We're just saying, let's have petrol at least. We'll pay for it, but let's have it as and when due. Let's have it. We don't have to stress for this, but this is where we are. And like Malkwe said, it's sad that we have come to accept some things. Some of us just sit pretty in our cars, wait for the queues, in fact, get connections and ensure that we have petrol. And once we get that petrol, we're fine. Every other person can keep queuing. But let's remind ourselves that, yes, we have come to take it as a norm, but it is not normal. This is abnormal. Well, it's petrol tanker drivers today. Who knows who will be tomorrow? If there's anything we've learned about that sector, is the fact that it is very, very unpredictable. The governor of Edo State was talking about subsidy recently when he talked about that 60 billion naira, saying that, well, we say we want subsidy in some sense, but you see a lot of people are against it. So will deregulation solve this? That's a big question.
Well, I don't know if that question, if we can call it a question, because look, they've told us everything. Yes, we've deregulated. Well, there's no more subsidy for fuel. We've removed the subsidy. It's not in the budget anymore. Then you see the budget, what's going on here. So they need to be upfront about, with the people. And besides, I don't know why an oil-producing nation will think it an achievement to see that there isn't any fuel queues. You're not queuing up to buy petroleum products. When countries that don't even have those products, resources, don't even know any such thing as queuing up. So, just as Mark said, some people can't even speak up to save their lives. Yeah, you may look to the press, but the press won't report anything if you don't say something. So there'll be nothing to report. So
the press is even looking for petrol to buy at that point.
that was
so
challenging.
It's really sad and unfortunate, but people need to understand that the decisions we make, maybe say every 4 years, will always, you will always see it play out subsequently. It could be in your local government, it could be wherever, because as long as you are in it, we're all in this together. So whatever sentiments exist out there, just know that some of these challenges are the reasons why we expect these things to happen.
Is there a way to underline what you said just now about the elections a little stronger? We understand that some states, I think it was over the weekend, there was local government elections in Rivers State.
Yeah.
Lagos State government has announced July 24 for local government elections. How many people even know the people they should select?
Well, there you go. Well, let's see, because yesterday when we looked at the dailies and some of these things came up, we thought, why do they always have to get that assurance every month? It means there's something really going on out there. And then when you hear them say that thing, that's when you then see cues in one way or the other. I'm not saying that, that's a pattern now, it's just what we notice. So it could be maybe next time may not happen that way. But let's see what the dailies reflect this time around to see what, might just play out moving forward. Take a look at Nigerian Tribune first. Why there won't be a national conference presidency. Yeah, I know. Well, many had been going back and forth about this. And now you're greeted with this headline. You think, wait a minute.
It's a bubble for some people.
Is it because we have had national conferences?
But I think I don't think, the agitation should be waved aside as such. A lot of people are asking for, maybe they don't exactly mean a conference. They just mean let's come together and decide the way forward. Let's solve these issues. It might not be the conference, but these issues need to be sorted. The issues about restructuring, about fiscal federalism and all that, these are issues that are very present. So maybe this might also be contextual from the presidency, but these issues need to be tackled.
Well, remember when we put up a poll, where over 10,000 people voted and said we need to have a referendum.
Oh, yeah.
That's what people are asking. Look, you always, we're not the first country to talk about this or go this route. Argentina, just go look at their constitutions, and then they said the people wanted something, and then eventually, even if it was not provided for in our laws, they had to make provision for that.
Because it's democracy.
Yeah, so, but now, you need to read this though, and put it in context and see, okay, wait a minute. Is this a blanket talk about all of those talk, either about restructuring, a national conference, whatever it is? Because even the ruling party themselves set up a committee headed by Kaduna State Governor about, what, was it restructuring or reform?
And there was a
something
white
in
paper.
that line. So, wherein is this, is it a false pass? Find it out. Well, when you read it, you get to know. And then, yesterday, okay, I'll hold on, because some of the dailies do have that story. But you equally see this, well, shocking to a lot of people and a bit normal to some others. NDLEA arrests undergraduates and then the boyfriend for selling drug cookies to school children. Whoa. And it turns out that this is something that a lot of people have been doing. Yeah, got word on that. So, so if you thought, yeah, they put those things in cookies and people eat it, and you know, but it turns out that some persons who are, it's in Abuja anyway. Yeah, it was in Abuja. So,
Why? I know, right? That's the only word that can just come out. Why?
well, it's not that straightforward. Some have been doing it thinking it's a fad. Then it goes on, you just try once and think, okay, just one off. But it turns out that some of those things that people do, that they take for granted, now they could tag a drug peddler. That's all good for the record. She's an undergraduate, and then they thought it was just a normal thing. But then when you're going to buy one cookie for 1,500 naira, then you should ask questions.
Oh, one cookie for 1,500. So how are students buying it then? I mean, the pocket money I got while I was in school wasn't.
That's your generation.
Oh dear. So students get like 1,500 these days.
That's your generation.
Can I go back to school now?
Well, even if you went back to school now, depending on the distance between home and school, that
Oh,
1,000
dear.
naira is just transport fare.
Wow. Okay. Take a look at the front page of the Guardian newspaper. I'm still shocked, really. Cookies and the pocket money.
In your generation, you didn't have cookies, you had biscuits.
Okay, Vanguard leads. Ouch, shots fired, right?
Oh, dear.
Vanguard leads with this one.
I'm going to do Mr. and Mrs. for him because of this. I'll write one and use that against him.
Oh dear. But what's on the front page of the Vanguard really is not smiling at all. And it says, FG films as UK offers asylum to IPOB MASSOB members. Take a look at the writers. UK to grant asylum to persecuted IPOB MASSOB members. But you see, FG saying, UK disrespectful, sabotaging terrorism fight. What Biafrans need, cherish most is referendum, not UK asylum. IPOB. Ohanes Ndigbo tasks Buhari on dialogue. So is that, I mean, maybe that's what the conference might mean, or the confab might mean in this case. And you see, UK wants to pacify the Igbo INC. It's a lot, really. You find more details on page 13.
It's interesting that you know, those sub-headlines mention a referendum. We have recruited senators and members of the House of Representatives for the past 21 years, and not one of them has been told by their constituents that they want a referendum. Is that what we're talking about here? We have had how many constitutional alterations? 4?
I think it's a case of, maybe that's how I say it, you asking for, you ask for bread and you
Get cookies.
you get cookies, right? So
Cookies?
I'm not, you know what, on top of the nameplate, I mean, I don't want to mess that word cookies for you, so let me just move on. Agitators for secession can't bully Buhari. That's coming from the presidency, yet again, in line with what we discussed earlier. But let me take Mr. and Mrs. for you this morning. You see, Mrs. saying, I mean, I think she just served a meal to Mr. saying, you like the soup? It contains shrimps, crab, goat meat, dry fish, chicken, turkey, periwinkle, and even grass cutter.
That's higher right there.
Oh, and Mr. says, I'm not surprised though. People like you who studied zoology are always looking for an opportunity to create a mini zoo. And it seems she has created that in the plate. There's sports news for you also. Kelechi Iheanacho's father.
Super League.
Oh yeah, you see teams pulling out of that now.
Already?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chelsea and Man City pulled out.
I think maybe that was the plan all along, because I want to believe those teams will not have made that decision without thinking it through.
So they want to just test the waters and see how people are going to react.
Is it because of what the FIFA president said or what the UEFA president said?
Or what the fans said. Maybe
there's more to it though. Maybe general reactions.
Maybe there's a ploy to get a confirm on that one too. That's Vanguard for
Maybe
you.
they'll
That would
force
be an
them to
international
come.
confab.
Yeah.
Okay. Daily Trust newspaper has this to say: governors unanimous on killing of all bandits and terrorists, ascribed to El Rufai. Stories on page 5.
Why is it not happening?
Exactly.
If it's not.
Umahi to returning herdsmen, stay where you are. Ebonyi governor's pronouncement in good faith, says ACF. And this one is interesting, guys. Unemployment, root cause of insecurity. Fire me. And I think we have said it a few times, on this program. The question then is, what do we do about this? We've been facing, adept at fighting insecurity. How about preventing it? Unemployment would be one way to go. On that, I'd have to agree with the governor. And a number of others, well, the story we referenced earlier, commuters stranded as fuel scarcity rages in Abuja. Others. That story is on page 18. Right under the picture there of queues at a filling station in Abuja, Debbie's death, Nigeria and Boko Haram insurgency. That's on page 3. Find out what all of that is about this morning. Mark?
Well, let me take you through New Telegraph. You find this on the front page. Federal government to IPOB, Odudua. You can't intimidate Buhari. That's what's on the front page of New Telegraph this morning. You can't intimidate Buhari. You saw there was a press conference yesterday where one of the president's spokesperson was speaking at the conference. That's what's on the front page of New Telegraph. Says, call for national confab, a misnomer. No country in the world today is crime-free, says Garba Shehu. And then you also have that quote, UK sabotaging terrorism fight. So that's on the front page of New Telegraph. You also see there motorists groan as petrol queues resurface in Abuja. NNPC GMD blames tanker drivers, insist no price increase. Kill all bandits, El Rufai charges military. Says no one living in forest is innocent. That forest thing again. Remember, forest has now, become an underlying word now. Get out of the forest. No. Why should they leave the forest? But hey, no one living in the forest is innocent. It's a statement you're seeing here. Governors at receiving end of current security challenge that's been attributed to Governor Fayemi. AMCON fault report on court disobedience clears air on seized Lekki property. And you also find this one. NESG to federal government, Nigeria's business space overregulated. They have a number of other stories for you just beneath the nameplate. You might want to do that. That drug cookie story is also on the front page of New Telegraph. I don't know why Chamberlain kept on insisting it's in Abuja, it's in Abuja. What is that? Abuja has all the bad news this morning. What's going on?
Well, that's where the story happened, I guess. So, I'm just reporting the news as a reporter, an innocent reporter. Take a look at the Guardian next, anyway. Debbie's death deals huge blow to fighting insurgency, says Buhari. Chadian leaders' exit will expose army to more Boko Haram attacks. Ezekwesili, NIA DG wants strict monitoring of situation in Chad. He was leading the troops right there, so he died in the line of duty. So it's going to be a massive, situation over there in Chad. So there you go. That's the Guardian.
Well, leadership leads with a story in our president saying Buhari not intimidated by secession agitations. That statement is credited to the presidency. Rules out another national confab, says UK asylum for IPOB members disrespectful, sabotaging anti-terror war. So that's a big one for the leadership. But see this one, just to put the insecurity in context. Nigeria may lose 32 billion naira annually to insecurity in schools. So if I heard correctly, the minister is saying for every $2 you invest in education, you reap, I think, $10. So for if you lose this 32 billion yearly, imagine how much you'll be losing cumulatively.
Well, it depends on the school, the circumstances, and because that's not a flat situation.
Oh yeah, some say it's way more than 32 billion.
We're even looking at the calculations for now. How about the reverberating effect over generations to come?
Which is why I contextualize it $2 to $10. So 32 billion this year. How much will it be in the next 10 years?
What was our budget to education anyway?
The Daily Times newspaper leads with commuters, motorists groan as petrol queues resurface. Again, we referenced that earlier. You may want to find out what all of that is about. Right over above the nameplate, Josun Passan walk out on Ngige. Others. What happened? The details are on the inside pages. Mark.
Blueprint has this one. After 30 years in power, 37-year-old Kaka Debi succeeds slain father as Chadian leader. That's the lead story on the front page of Blueprint. It's a coup and unconstitutional, that's according to rights activists. No, his long history of visiting battlefields doesn't make this a coup. Okay. Debi's demise, setback for insurgency fight. Macron, Netanyahu extol ex-leaders' virtues. That's on the front page of Blueprint. I do know that when I saw that story yesterday, I was quite sad because that was one leader, you know, who didn't spare Boko Haram terrorists. He led his troops. He led them personally. And, well, even though we're not certain now, because this is rebels in the north of Chad, this was more political than about insurgents, but he died fighting. I don't know how many of Africa's leaders we can say that for, that they actually physically lead their troops to whatever battle the country is facing, or even if it was to protect their own regime. But that's what we have on the front page of Blueprint. Presidency, no room for another national confab. That story is also there. It says Buhari won't be bullied, intimidated. Federal government slams UK over asylum for IPOB elements. Amidst fiscal crisis, federal government states vow not to go to CBN. So CBN threatening that, oh, the money was overdue earlier. We're going to now start asking for them. I don't know if maybe that's what's informing this. Page 22 might give you more inkling. But see this one, livestock industry critical to economy. That's according to Lawan. You might want to see this. Bill to establish National Livestock Bureau. Skills, second reading. It's a page 5 read. Let's leave it there for Blueprint.
All right, take a look at News Direct. Few queues elimination. Interesting. NNPC increases daily PMS truck out with 1,661 trucks. So the question is, for how long? And is this what will eliminate fuel queues?
And that's
really
dependent on the tanker drivers anyway.
Exactly. So and then it says petrol queues, black marketers surface in Abuja. Others, look, they've always been there really. They only change location. They're only more visible when this kind of scenario, just like hawkers.
Oh yeah.
When there's traffic, you see them. When there isn't that much traffic right there, they move to where there's traffic. So if you happen to be where there isn't any traffic, you won't see them. So that's what happens when it says. So in context, yeah, they might have surfaced in some other areas, and so they disappear after a while.
And you don't want to mention Abuja again.
I already did. The paper says surface in Abuja. Others. I'm just reading the dailies, that's all. No pun intended. There you go.
Are you sure? Just asking.
Or read this headline yourself. Let's see if you won't mention. You skip one word there. Well, that's it. We'll look at some of the dailies here today. We're back in a moment. Stay with us.
Members of the Nigerian Bar Association in Edo State marched to the government house, Benin City, in solidarity with the Judiciary Staff Union of Nigeria, who are seeking financial autonomy for the judiciary. Upon arriving at the government house, security personnel did not allow them into the premises, citing COVID-19 protocol. Members of the NBA subsequently held onto the letter containing their demands, which they had intended to hand over to the governor, and then proceeded to table their grievances to journalists.
Where there is no financial autonomy, of course, the judiciary suffers, and it is, of course, not being able to function effectively and independently. And it is to this effect that we have brought a letter to His Excellency in compliance with the directive of our President.
In neighboring Delta State, the NBA assembled at the entrance of the Delta State Government House in Asaba, where they were received by the State Commissioner for Justice, who assures them of the state government's readiness to implement what the Constitution demands in that regard.
The aspect that is left, it gives the assurance that it will be fully implemented because it's constitutional. If it's not constitutional, then start lobbying. But if it's constitutional, you don't have to lobby. So have that assurance that we've made promises, we've endeavored to keep them, we will keep this one.
It was a different scenario in Rivers State. Although members of the NBA marched to the government house, where they were met by the governor, the NBA branch chairman says their protest is to prevent Rivers State from retracing its steps in the implementation of the financial autonomy.
The Rivers State judiciary cannot be compared with any other judiciary in the country. But Your Excellency, we are afraid what happens to successive governors when Your Excellency leaves office.
In response, Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike threatened to suspend the implementation if the judiciary workers in the state continue the protests.
Your fear is if I leave. What's my business? So you're protesting. So the person that is coming, I'll flog him to say you must do this. So please tell Joshua, I said, they should come back to work. If they don't come back to work, me too, I'll stop implementing the financial so the strike will be justified.
Similarly, lawyers in Ondo State staged a peaceful protest in Akure, the state capital. The state deputy governor addresses the protesters.
So I just want to plead with our learned friends to be patient. Let the discussion be completed.
Although some of the governors had indicated their support for the course, time will tell if the demands of the protesters will be met anytime soon.
Well, that's the topic of our discussion this morning, the ongoing Jusun strike. Well, I don't know, you didn't see that report. What we played for you was what happened in most states of the Federation yesterday. But something else happened right here in Abuja. Yes, just in case you're curious, a lot of things happened in Abuja yesterday. The Jusun workers were supposed to be attending a meeting with the Minister of Labour, and the meeting was delayed by over an hour or thereabouts, and they got upset, sang a solidarity song, and walked out of the meeting that was supposed to have held. Later on, the minister did speak as to why that happened, as to why he wasn't attending the meeting at the slated time with Jusun members. But there will be a little more light shed on that this morning because we have with us Mr. Emmanuel Abioye, who is the Deputy President of Jusun. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you very much.
We also have Mr. Jibrin Okutekpa, who's a senior advocate of Nigeria. You're welcome this morning.
Good morning, Mark. Well, good to see you after a long time.
Good to see you too, sir.
Thank you.
Let's start with you, Mr. Abioye. What has informed this particular strike of JUSUN at this time? The fight for autonomy, financial autonomy more specifically, by the judiciary has been on for a while. But what triggered it this time around?
Well, that question has been asked severally. Don't forget that sometimes in 2015 we were on strike for the same purpose.
Indeed.
And we suspended it based on the fact that people intervened, major stakeholders intervened, that we should still wait for the governors, the Accountant General of the Federation, and whoever is concerned for the implementation to do the needful. So we were taking our time to look at the situation. And then, when we saw that nothing is coming forth, nothing seriously was coming forth, we have to take the bull by the horn again by resuming the strike that we suspended sometime in 2015. So nothing new triggered anything than for the fact that, remember there was a law that was signed by the president, that's the Order 10, which ought to have aided the implementation of that financial autonomy. But to our amazement, the dragging on it, there was implementation committee that was set up by the federal government, and that was the purpose for which we held on, and we did not do anything. But when we saw that nothing was coming forth from the end of the implementation committee as well, we have to resume the strike. That's just it, on the same matter.
Well, it's sad to see that, even though you were appealed to and you shelved your strike, nothing happened. But some people will say that it's nothing new. Many strikes have been shelved, and we see them resuming, especially after nothing has happened. We had that situation with doctors, resident doctors, saying the same thing happened. ASUP, a number of unions have also said that as well. But so far, so good. It would seem that your action has now yielded fruit. We've seen governors hold meetings and finally say, look, we would implement by May. That's when they're hoping to start implementation. In some states, they say they have actually started the implementation. Some states have complied, maybe not fully, like Lagos State. We also saw on the news yesterday, members of the NBA acknowledging that at least they have been able to comply substantially, not fully. Does that give you any comfort that, some states seem to be showing how it can be done?
Not yet in Uhuru, yet definitely. We are not, we appreciate the fact that some states have taken steps to implement the financial autonomy. But like you said, partial compliance is more or less like no compliance. The rule of law, there's nothing like I'm trying to obey or I'm trying to obey partially. What we need to put at the public domain is that this financial autonomy we are talking about, they are in two parts. We have, for instance, we have consolidated fund, federation consolidated fund that has to do with federal government fund. And we have also the state consolidated fund. So that has to do with the IGRO at the state level. So the IGRO at the state level is perhaps what some states are saying they are complying with in terms of implementation of the autonomy for the judiciary at the state level. So the fact still remains that except and until we do the needful at the federation account, the implementation of the autonomy at the federation account, it's more or less like we have not done what's supposed to be done in full, definitely. So we are not yet happy with the situation because, for instance, like I said, allocation that come from the federal government every month, a part ought to have gone to the judiciary by the law, the provision of the law. That's section 81, subsection 3, section 162, subsection 9. The fund that comes from the federal government every month, a part of it ought to have gone to the judiciary through the NJC that will transmit the same down to the rest of courts according to the law. So the one that be implemented partially is the one of section 121, subsection 3, which is at IGRO at the state level, upon which the budgets are based at the state level. So we are not yet happy with the situation of things. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. We will come to, I'll come to you, Mr. Okutekpa, shortly as to the role of the NBA and if the order given by the NBA that its members must keep visiting state executives until this implementation is achieved. But let's quickly see a clip of what happened, what transpired yesterday at the meeting that Justin was supposed to hold with the Minister of Labour.
Governors Forum on one side, the judges who are heads of courts, the judicial union, the parliamentary union, and the speakers, conference of speakers. So they have reached some agreement at the parley they had with the chief of staff. And that was why we reconvened for today. We gave them an appointment for today. We gave them another appointment by last Friday because we were in the know that by yesterday the necessary agreements will have been reached. And once necessary agreements have been reached as memorandum of understanding, we bring it, everybody here, and detail them with timelines and time frame. So as they have finished them and come for this meeting. But there were some loose ends they did not tie up. So we took permission. I asked the permanent secretary and the officials responsible to explain to them, to the two unions, that they have to exercise patience, to enable us tidy these areas before meeting with them. So nobody slighted them, nobody refused to meet with them. We wanted to meet with them so that the meeting will be fruitful, so that whatever is signed here will be implementable. So that is, in a nutshell, what happened today. And we are making contact with them by tomorrow. And this work have not even finished. The government side have to go back. The Solicitor General and Implementation Committee, Secretary NJC, and all of them, they have to go back and tie up the loose ends that I have pointed out to them here.
Well, that's the Minister of Labour. That's explaining his own side as to why he didn't show up for the meeting he was supposed to hold with your union yesterday. Did you find his explanation satisfactory?
Not at all. Because in the first instance, the meeting was scheduled for 3 o'clock. We thought perhaps if at all there's going to be any change of time or date of the meeting, we ought to have been communicated too. Because when that meeting, some of us earlier, and 3 o'clock until 4:30, we thought maybe perhaps they're not ready for that meeting. And don't forget this fasting period for some of us. So they need to go and take care of themselves. So nobody appealed to us initially to say that, okay, the Honorable Minister is doing something or is attending to some other things for us to hold on. Obviously, we'll have been reasonable. So, but nobody came to us to explain anything until when we stood up. And we were on our way at the staircase when, the permanent, like you said, the permanent secretary came over to tell us that, so it was something that ought to have been done earlier, whereas then we were at the conference room. So that's why it's not satisfactory to us, although we have heard what he said. Mm-hmm. Would
you be going back if he reaches out to your union today?
Our doors are open. We are ready to, if truly and sincerely, something will be done that will be meaningful. We're not happy going on strike. We are Nigerians, and we don't have any other country going. So we want the economy to work. That's the purpose for which we went on strike in the first instance. So if we are being called for a meeting, why not? We're obliged, definitely.
Mr. Kutekwe, let me come to you. It would seem that somehow the lawyers fight for the rights of everybody else but have left out the rights of the judiciary itself in asking for what it's due it, which is financial autonomy. Why has it taken this long for us to wake up?
Marco, I can't agree less with you. You are completely right. And I think that speaking for myself, what Jusun is doing ought to be the role that we should play as professional association. Mark you, judges cannot speak. They are to be seen sitting and they cannot talk. So that is why, for instance, we have a body called Nigerian Bar Association, whose motto is promoting the rule of law. So I'm not speaking for Nigerian Bar Association. I'm speaking as a member of that association that believe reasonably too within me that we ought to take the lead, not to play the second fiddle role. Because whether in private practice, whether in business, whether whatever vocation you chose to do after being called to bar, you are a member of that noble profession, the profession that people look onto for succor, for comfort. Indeed, we are the only profession that has one arm of government exclusively devoted to it with a defined qualification. So for me, I think our role, we need to be more, we need to bite more than backing. We have issued too much press conferences, press releases. We have appealed too much. And lawyers are supposed to be the social engineers who give directions how things are to be done. So come back to the real issues at stake. Is this question of financial autonomy? And like I said in the press statement I issued yesterday, I commend Jusun for taking this bold step. It's the right thing to do. It has to be done. It must be done. It shouldn't be left undone. Because the hope of the common man to get justice in Nigeria has gone into serious jurisprudential dehydration. And the courts are just glorifying, I don't know how to call it, not even a correct primary school. Most of the times you see our judicial officers sitting on bench and with no air conditioning, with no correct court hall. And so the Constitution, the framer of our Constitution, says that money that is meant for the judiciary in any financial year should be released to the heads of courts. Now, arguments have been canvassed by erudite legal practitioners of note as to whether who has the responsibility or not. I don't want to go into that semantic. But all that I can say here this morning is that there is an admission on the part of the people that are responsible to obey Nigerian Constitution that they are violating Nigerian Constitution on a daily basis. For me, if we have independent legislature, these are impeachable offenses because every governor in Nigeria subscribed to oath of office and oath of allegiance to obey, defend, and protect Nigerian Constitution. Section 81, subsection 3, Section 169, subsection 3, Section 121, subsection 3 of Nigerian Constitution are parts of Nigerian Constitution that the governor, the president, and even the ministers and the commissioners, local government chairmen, all subscribe, even the judicial officers, subscribe to defend and protect. And so it does not require Jusun to go on strike for you to pay fidelity and obedience to the provision of this Constitution. But Maokwa, do you know why it is being done? What? Nigeria is the only country I know in this world that will respect no rule of law. The rule of convenience is what we operate in Nigeria, not rule of law. Because where there is rule of law, due process, it does not require horsewhip for any governor to direct, to release, and give to the heads of court the monument for the head of courts. But I won't say that. Like I also say in my write-up, giving financial autonomy to judiciary is a tip of the iceberg than the kind of independence of judiciary that I, as a legal practitioner, will require that Nigerian judiciary should have. For instance, our recruitment process to the bench is faulty. Indeed, in this country of today, what you know does not matter, it's who you know that matters. And so the third arm of government, which is the judiciary, which has a defined qualification, it is not sufficient for you to say, I'm a legal practitioner called to Nigerian Bar and I have been a lawyer for 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, therefore I should go to the Supreme Court. No. We need the best of the best to man the judiciary. When you have a lily-livered judicial officers that have been imposed on you by the power that be, or a lily-livered judicial officers that does not know his left from his right, then when you appear before that judge, you are in serious punishment. One, punishment of understanding the jurisprudential basis of your argument. Two, punishment of understanding even this left from the right. So when you have such people manning the bench, then justice is not only denied, it is murdered. So we must look at our recruitment process. Two, you don't just get anybody to the bench who has no strength of character. You require strength of character to walk in the kingdom of Nigeria that is infested with what I refer to as a cancer called corruption. Because where a judicial officer is being paid a peanut and is adjudicating over a matter worth trillions of naira or dollars or pounds sterling, and all you need to do to get that judicial officers to give you judgment devoid of justice is to offer to that judicial officer money that is fantastic money. And if he doesn't have a strength of character, the kind that permit me the use of this ecclesiastical example, the kind of character of Joseph, who has to run away from Potiphar's wife because the wife does not belong to him. So we don't, until we have a judicial officer with strength of character who does not support appearance of impropriety and who defend the oath of office as giving justice to all manner of persons, irrespective of tribe, religion, political affiliation, then we have not gotten an independent judiciary. So the character of a judicial officer, it matters a lot. Now, before now, nobody lobbied to be made judges. And so we need to give merit the opportunity. Not who you know, but what you know. The other point I will need to make is that, yes, this strike must be fought and must be fought with an evangelical commitment. But in fighting, when the financial independence is won, how are we then sure, what have we put in place that we are not going to run into the murky water of the kind of thing that the local government in Nigeria suffer in the hands of state governments, where what is due for Maokwe is being held by Okutepa and not given to Maokwe to function well. So how are we going to be sure that when money are released to the heads of courts, the heads of courts will not behave like emperors and not allowing the money to trickle down to the people that need it to work? How are we sure when contracts are to be awarded, the cancer operating in our system called corruption will not invade that third arm of government? In the award of contract, in the award of execution, there will be no kickback. We must put that in place and monitor it and implement it so that we don't run from fry pan to fire.
Which is a very big, because yesterday when I was watching the news and listening to the chairman of NBA Lagos branch talking about how in Lagos, they have completely complied with recurrent expenditure and they have complied 75% with capital expenditure. Well, just generally, I think it registered even further that part of the things that Justin is asking for is to be able to implement, the judiciary should be able to implement its own projects, such as buying cars for its own judges, building houses if needed, building courtrooms if needed, which will mean inevitably that you'll have to award contracts. And, you know, some people will say, are these the kind of things that the judiciary should be involved in? Isn't that going to take away from the mandate of the judiciary? I'll let you intervene in that, but let me hear the thoughts of...
well, I mean, to drive it home, the thing is that if such the implementation is done as expected, I mean, the board can be set up. For instance, one of the demands they're making now, they're putting at the table of the Honorable Minister, is that, first of all, the self-accounting law has to be implemented in every state. It's also known as fund management law in state. So that one we set up, we make them to set up boards to oversee whatever contract has been awarded. And don't forget, the third schedule of our Constitution, Part 2 precisely, set up the established commission, Judicial Service Commission in every state. And they can also perform oversight functions over these, the projects or whatever. Because we cannot, because of that, and we should hold on to not implementing the provision of the Constitution, which is the financial autonomy. So I believe so strongly that will be sorted out. It shouldn't be a problem for the Judicial Service Commission to set up a board to oversee any contracts awarded. Yes.
Oh, I'm sure you're aware that wherever there is money, you know, sometimes acrimony naturally, if it's not managed properly, acrimony naturally sets in. But we'll come to Mr. Okutekpa in terms of whether you're satisfied with, you know, that particular explanation that, oh, we are looking for a board, and then we also think that, what board did you call it now? The
Judicial Service Commission, setting up a board to oversee.
The GSC can actually
yes.
look into it. But let's take a break now. When we come back, we'll get Mr. Okutekpa's thoughts on the matter. Please stay with us.
I want to say very clearly that the judiciary is the one holding both the executive and the legislature. And if there's any problem during after election, you run to judiciary. If there's any problem during administration, you run to the judiciary. And our own take is that judiciary must be properly put in its best position. And that is the reason why we are supporting JUSON.
And we've come here to press on the point that this ought to be observed, you know, because the Constitution is sacrosanct and is a document that underpins the very essence of our existence. Therefore, all responsible government at all levels should ensure full compliance with the constitutional provisions. Government should not pick and choose what provision of the Constitution to comply with. So we were Mr. Governor today. The listening governor, he met us at a very short notice, less than 24 hours, because of the sort of regard he has for the bar. So he met with us, and both sides we had a dialogue, and we heard from the other side of the coin. Of course, before we came here, we knew Lagos State had, you know, partly or partially complied with this constitutional provision, and it confirmed the fact that in terms of recurrent expenditure, Lagos State has complied 100%. And in terms of capital expenditure, it's complied 75%. And in Lagos State, no judiciary goes cap in hand to the executive to beg for funds. They all go to the House of Assembly to justify their budget. But all that said, whether there is full compliance or not in Lagos, we've pressed on the point that this is something that ought to be done.
Well, the Deputy President of JUSON, Mr. Emmanuel Abioye, and Mr. Jibrin Okutekpa, SAN, are still with us in the studio. And just before we went on break, you're about to intervene on a matter as to whether or not the GSA will be able to, you know, because you're talking about jumping from frying pan to fire, and he says that, well, the GSA might be able to, you know, oversee and ensure that tenders are properly done within the judiciary?
Well, before I answer you, I just hope that the JSC that Mr. Abioye talks about will not treat the Judicial Workers Union with the disdain for which the Honorable Minister of Labour treated them yesterday. When I watched the Honorable Minister of Labour giving defense as to how people you invited for a meeting at a particular time were kept without words coming to them, I feel like weeping for this country. Because in a country where you take issues like this justice delivery system with seriousness that it deserves, those officials ought not to be kept more than 5 minutes waiting without explanation as to whatever the reason was. So for me, speaking for myself, that explanation ought not to come. It's better not to explain than to give that explanation. Having said that, I had...
But they weren't slighted. I mean, he said that we didn't slight anybody. Did you feel slighted?
Well, we felt slighted. That's why we stood up. Like I said, I mean, there was no appeal to law. There was nobody coming to tell us.
Did you not feel slighted yourself?
Obviously.
As a Nigerian sitting here, within a reasonable concept, were you feeling satisfied with the explanation? I do not want you to answer, but answer it within yourself.
I was going to tell you that question remains rhetorical, but
very good. So let's not waste our time. The issue here is, before you see some, I see some of my colleagues praising governors. I do not see how I should praise a man or a woman for what is constitutionally obligated to do. So for me, we must avoid what I call sycophantic praises singing for a person who is under a constitutional obligation to do something. So let's come to this issue. The issue here is, if the money is given, there is a board, whatever name called. You know that under the Constitution, you have the State Judicial Service Commission of each state of the Federation. And in that State Judicial Service Commission, it's supposed to be like the equivalent of the National Judicial Council, where various persons are made up of the members. My fear is not what nomenclature you give to whoever is to oversee and execute a capital project of the judiciary. My fear is how we will not allow the Nigerian factor to creep into the judiciary in terms of implementing this financial autonomy. So I would suggest that rather than having serving judicial officers and people who are in the executive who can do, we should have retired judicial officers of impeccable character and credit, retired lawyers of integrity in Nigeria, to make, whether it is called board, whatever name it is called, to be charged with the responsibility of physical award of contract, development of the court for infrastructure and facilities. Because when a judge, or the chief judge, for instance, or the judiciary heads any committee and you award a contract, there is a breach of that contract, where do you head to for a resolution? You are still coming back to the same court. And justice must not only be done, but must be seen to be done. So when there is an appearance that if I go to court, the judges will be biased, then that Judas is disqualified from adjudication. So there must be Nigerians who must think loud. There would have been no need for this thinking if all of us are nationalistic, we are patriotic, we respect law and order, we don't prefer our money, because it is a belief generally that the national resources, our natural resources, is the national cake for everybody to share. And it is this ability to share and share it within a particular group of persons and not using it for what it's supposed to be used for, that we are in this state of serious financial developmental quagmire. If we have people who respect law, we have procurement law in this country, where you are to procure and buy things, what you are supposed to do, there is no fear of law in anybody in Nigeria. The reason is very simple. There are no consequences. Look at the murder of George Floyd, for instance. It began in America, it didn't last ad infinitum. But if that matter had begun in Nigeria, you and I will know how many lawyers would have been hired to take issue of preliminary objections, jurisdictional point. We will be chasing shadow rather than say substance. That is why sometimes I don't want to talk. Because when you talk, nobody listens to you. Otherwise, the fine provisions of our Constitution does not require this kind of halabalo, going on strike, economy is down, justice is not being served, prisoners are in prison, fundamental rights are being violated. And I can tell you, without apology, that some people who want this kind of state of affairs are happy that justice is not being served, because they are happy when others are not happy. We are in a serious situation. So I will advocate that we need a reorientation of our minds to obey our law, respect our laws. Everyone with respect seems to be lawless. And they now took on the theory that in a lawless society, it's be unlawful to be lawful. So everybody now is in a state of jungle. So our leaders must lead by example. For instance, when meeting was called, the minister ought to be there. Oh, gentlemen, there are things that are not being done rightly, and we couldn't get in touch with you. I apologize. These officers will go home satisfied that they have been respected. But in Nigeria, those who are in power have no respect for the downtrodden masses of this country. That is why they drive against traffic. You and I, your life matters not. And so things are just done haphazardly. And that is why everybody now takes to a profitable venture in this country, crime. Because it is more profitable to go to crime now, and I'm not advocating it, but that is what the leadership seems to be suggesting to Nigerians to do, than to go read book and get educated. Employment, are we not aware how employment is in a state of commercial value? For me, when I think of this country, my adrenaline is always high. I feel that the resources, we are in the midst of river, but very thirsty. Why? Because our resources are not being applied in the right direction, how it should be applied. And those who are not applying it rightly knows that no consequences will follow. Like Lee Kuan Yew said, if you want to stamp out corruption in Nigeria today, make example from the top.
You know, it is amazing how you have been able to link a whole thread of issues, you know, stemming from just the JUSUN strike, and saying that it's just a symptom of how we haven't upheld the rule of law. But let me quickly flip this to Lagos now, as I understand my colleague has questions for you. Ayo.
Thank you, Mokwe. I wanted to ask Mr. Okutekpa this one first of all. You heard the NBA in Rivers State say to the governor, who says, of course, he's been compliant. So they were asking him, what happens when you're gone? And they raised the question of not just starting an idea, but of sustaining it. Is there a likelihood that even if after these governors leave office, there could be a situation where the autonomy, financial autonomy to the judiciary could be upturned? Is there any thinking along the line of ensuring that there is no upturning by subsequent administrations?
Well, Ayo, good morning. I think it's a nice question you have asked. The fear of my colleagues in Rivers State was not unfounded. Nigeria seems to operate what I refer to as ad hoc system. We don't have a system that is put in place that is well respected, and there is no institutions to see to enforcement of our laws. So everyone that comes to power comes with his own varieties of idea, depending on what he wants to do and how to do it. And because Nigerians are just followers So if we have good leaders, Nigeria will follow. If we have bad leaders, Nigeria will follow. So all that we need to do now, the fear that my colleagues in River expressed to my colleague, the Governor Nyesom Wike, was not an unfounded fear. But again, the answer of the governor that what he will not be able to guarantee is also an example of how things have gone haywire. Because if there is a policy trust, a policy statement, constitutional provisions, it does not require horsewhip. It does not require JUSUN to go on strike. It does not require NBA to go to visiting them, to asking them to do what they needed to do. But we have left governance now to go to appealing to people who appeal to us, to govern us, to do what they are supposed to do. And so you discover therefore that when you link all of this together, sovereignty does not belong to Nigerian people. Sovereignty belongs to the power that be. And that is why they determine what to do, pick from the provisions of the Constitution. So there is no guarantee that Governor Nyesom Wike will be able to tell his predecessor, you must, his successor, you must do financial autonomy. Mark you, most governors are quarreling with their successors in office. So, what if his next person coming there is not from his political party? Or even if he's from his political party, and the person does not even share his ideology of respecting the Constitution. And I do not want the use of this word, giving financial autonomy.
What I find interesting also is the fact that, we've talked about some of these executive governors, they're not outsiders. Some of them are legal practitioners. They're lawyers.
That's what amazes me too, Maokwe. And I keep wondering on a daily basis whether there is a spirit that changed you from who you are the moment you get into government. Because if you see some of the things, perhaps they are seeing some things that we cannot see with our ordinary eyes. Otherwise, the provisions of Nigerian Constitution, as far as independence of the judiciary is concerned, is as clear, much more clearer than even the white you can see. And for any person who is sufficiently literate, not even learned, to appreciate the purport and content of that law.
Well, Mr. Kutepa, I also recall that you said, pardon me, I also recall that you said this is an impeachable offense, and that's a big deal. But, some will also say, who will then impeach the governor? So who will begin those proceedings? Is this legislature that is also calling and agitating for its own independence to a large extent? But I know Mr. Abioye might want to weigh in on what happens, for successive administrations across states when it comes to this financial autonomy. But add to that also, Mr. Abioye, just to put it on record, there was a section of the media that was reporting that you had maybe suspended your strike and all that. Just to be clear, has that happened?
Not at all. The strike was the prerogative of the National Executive Committee of our union. So the strike is still on as far as we are concerned. So there's no suspension yet until and except the needful is done.
So the report about the suspension, is it of the strike or of the protest, of the march, or was it just misreported?
Well, I think it was mixed reported, but what we suspended was the protest as at Tuesday when we were called for the meeting. So we were expecting that something positive will come up in that meeting. But of course, like you reported earlier, there was no meeting yesterday. So the strike is still on. The strike is still on.
Okay, I don't know if you want to...
we get our demand is being attended to.
Right, I don't know if you want to quickly wade into that discussion about what happens moving forward, because we don't want to see JUSUN go on strike after 2023 or after governors leave. So what is the thinking regarding that? Do you think there's any issue around that, or you think if it's sorted now, then that flies for the rest of our life as a nation, as it were?
Oh, obviously. You want me to respond now?
Yes, please.
Okay, obviously, I mean, if the solution is brought to bear of the problem of the lack of financial autonomy, that's the end of the strike, definitely. So don't forget, we have sundry issues that we're trying to solve and present before the government, but we see the financial autonomy as the basis for which every other issue can be resolved. So if the financial autonomy is implemented as we have been agitating, definitely, I mean, there's no need for us to go on strike anymore. I mean, so same as the administration, like Lieutenant Six said, the rule of law, that is the grand norm, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the Section 1, say that we, the people of Nigeria, having solemnly resolved and firmly resolved too, we are going to abide by this law. If a governor or whoever is in power swore to oath by the Constitution that's going to uphold it, so we believe that such oath ought not to have been made, without any regard to it. I mean, obviously, it's supposed to be our grand norm, and that's what it is. So if any successive administration come on board, the only thing that can guide them is still the Constitution.
Right.
So apart from the fact that, don't forget, we went to court to litigate over this matter, and the judgment is still subsisting up to now. There's no stay of execution. There's no appeal.
Mr. Abiore,
appeal the judgment.
If I could quickly come in here, there's another issue I'd like to raise. I mean, yes, while the talk about financial autonomy is ongoing, there's also the talk about corruption in the judiciary. And I'm sure you recall that corruption index, the survey, the pilot survey which ICPC put out, which ranks the judiciary as the top. And it mentioned, court staff, clerks, registrars and all, as being largely involved in this bribe for judgment issues. In fact, I put it at 21%. So what is the thinking regarding that? Is this also going to resolve that issue? Because when we talk about justice, it's the whole gamut.
Well, of course, I believe so. Without justifying anybody who's into corrupt among the whoever has been indicated to have been corrupt among the staff, maybe the stakeholders in the administration of justice. I believe so strongly, without justifying any action of corruption, if the financial autonomy of the judiciary is implemented, obviously it will go down to everybody. The court administration will be more effective, and of course, it will reflect in what we do. Corruption is everywhere in the society, not only limited to the judiciary. So I want to believe so strongly that part of the corruption that we are trying to fight is that somebody is not implementing the fund that's meant for the public the way the law says they should implement it. I mean, the fund that is not being disbursed according to the rule of law is not only corruption, financial corruption, that somebody is not adhered strictly to the provision of the Constitution to disburse the money that meant for the judiciary. That's part of the corruption, obviously.
All right, let me turn to Mr. Kutagba on this one. In your piece, you did ask that the bar and the bench come together to fashion out an enduring judicial system. But does financial autonomy actually guarantee judicial independence, given the fact that, the way judges are appointed remains an issue? So will there still be need to talk about judiciary reforms?
Thank you, Chamberlain. I'm happy you referred to the piece I wrote. I said financial independence is just a tip of the iceberg. There are much more issues that require us to come together. And I have advocated that there should be a stakeholders meeting involving the leadership of the bar, the leadership of the bench, the top echelons of the profession, like the body of benchers, the body of senior advocate of Nigeria, leadership of JUSUN. Then let us come together and ask ourselves, why is it that what we are not expected to do, we are deeply involved in doing it? Mark you, the profession that I belong to is a profession of light, where we have our code of ethics, we have our code of conduct. There are code of conduct for judicial officers. There are code of conduct for legal practitioners. If a lawyer, what is sought, for instance, respects Rule 1 of the Rules of Professional Conduct and does not engage in frivolity, ensures that the rule of law is obeyed, is honored, he will not file a frivolous processes to delay justice. A judicial officer, for instance, who is what is on him, will not solicit or appears to solicit even a favor from anyone. And so I will advocate that apart from financial autonomy, there must be an independent recruitment process. Recruit the best of the best. I have said that from the beginning of this program. The situation where what you know does not matter, but who you know does not augur well for the judiciary. And the judiciary is the one that has been licensed to decree that somebody should be killed, not even President Muhammad Buhari. So, if that is the case, then the person to man the bench to make that pronouncement must be somebody of strength, of character, somebody of great comportment, somebody who cannot be intimidated into giving justice, somebody who does not go to discuss the case outside of the facts presented by party before him, somebody who does not go to the market to solicit for help from litigants from him, so before him. So that's my suggestion to us. And we have a lot of us, a lot of lawyers, a lot of judges that are of credit and of repute, but are they allowed to operate without interference, either from within or from without? That's the big question. So the independence of the judiciary is completely a necessary ingredient for the rule of law. Once judiciary is not independent, once you have lily-livered judges, once what you get in court are judgment devoid of justice, then you are giving room for anarchy. And once there is anarchy, the economy will be in jeopardy, there will be no place for industry, then life becomes shortish, brutish, and nasty. And then every one of us will run helter-skelter. And your guess is as good as mine. So it's in the overall interest of every one of us that judiciary be independent.
Indeed, well, little drops of water make the mighty ocean. If you say that, financial autonomy is one step, let us see just how much progress Jusun will make with that. But we have to thank you, gentlemen, for coming on Sunrise Daily this morning. Mr. Emmanuel Abioye is Deputy President of Judiciary Staff Union. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. Jibrin Okutekpa, who's been on fire this morning. You say when it comes to issues of Nigeria, your adrenaline is always pumping.
Yes, because we're unfortunately in this kind of dire situation. And there seems to be no hope for generation tomorrow unless we all cry out. That's why I agreed to be here this morning.
Thank you for sharing your honest thoughts. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria. Well, that's it for this segment. We will be taking on another issue, and hopefully the adrenaline will remain on the same level when we come back from this break. Please stay with us.
While it appears the Southeast is still trying to come to terms with the attacks on the Correctional Center and police headquarters in Owerri, Imo State, there's been yet another round of attacks in the zone on April the 19th. First incident in Abia State witnessed an attack in a police station in Uzuokoli, Bende local government area, with offices and vehicles set on fire by the attackers using explosives. Luckily, no life was lost, but 2 suspects in custody escaped. The police, however, promised to unravel the brains behind the attack as investigations are ongoing.
We can't do it alone. Security is a collective responsibility. So you play your own role, we play our own role, and you see that everywhere will be secure.
The second incident in Anambra State witnessed an attempted attack at the police headquarters of Zone 13 Command in charge of Anambra and Enugu State in Ukpo, Donokofia local government area of Anambra State. The scene of the attack sees destruction from a burned security post to vehicles, a shattered conference room including the office of the AIG. There are bullet holes and clear indication of how dangerous the situation must have been.
It's mostly used by the military.
The Deputy Commissioner of Police in charge of criminal investigation says 2 officers were wounded, but several attackers were also gunned down.
We had enough mobile men at the gates, and they engaged them when they came. They were able to repel them, and although we had some injuries on 2 of our men who are presently in the hospital, we were able to take down some of them and also injured many of them.
In his reaction on the attacks in Anambra, a former Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Azubike Ihejirika, wants leaders and youth in the southeast to support the government and relevant authorities to fight the ugly trend.
I call on all leaders and all youths, irrespective of political calling, to close ranks, work with government establishments, statutory security agencies to rid the southeast zone of insecurity.
The insecurity situation in the southeast indeed calls for urgent attention by everyone concerned to put an end to the attacks for the sake of peace and normalcy.
Mr. Joshak Habila joins us now. He's a former DIG operations with the Nigeria Police. You're welcome to Sunrise City this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, as a former police officer and one who got to the level of Deputy Inspector General of Police, you must have been very apprehensive about the attacks we have been seeing on police formations and police infrastructure in the southeast of the country. What have been your thoughts on the matter?
It's quite unfortunate that the police and their equipment have been the victims of attack by the same people that the police exists to provide security. As it is, it's quite unfortunate because the deterioration has gotten to a level where the police will begin to think. You know that the police, in getting to a training on how to police the space in this country, is that the police is meant to maim. When you shoot, you demobilize. You do not intentionally shoot to kill, because your responsibility is that which lies with the government. The police is that organ that ensures that the safety of the people is very paramount, as captured in 1999 Constitution. And so in doing that, their training is very, very conscious of the fact that when you want to douse a situation that is precarious, a situation that there's an element of breakdown of law and order, you are meant to ensure that you use minimum force as much as possible to be able to demobilize. You shoot to demobilize, but you don't shoot to kill. But a situation where members of the public or bandits and criminals or whoever they are will face the Nigerian police, not sparing them, but bringing them down and then put aflame the facilities, then the police must go back to the drawing board to ensure that they do not get to them, neither do they get to their facilities and equipments.
Indeed, and so one will wonder what the thinking has been in that regard, because we recall very early on when we heard the first terrorist attack, the first one that happened at the Louis Edet House, where a bomber was able to come in successfully and detonate a bomb, we saw that, you know, across almost all security formations, at least here in the Federal Capital Territory and perhaps in some other parts of the country, that certain steps were taken to ensure that people do not even come close. So when we now see that an attack has happened in a place like Imo State, on the police headquarters, where inmates are also freed as well, shouldn't that have sent like a warning signal to almost all police formations, especially in the Southeast, where there have been several attacks on security men, that, you know, something was definitely in the offing, and there ought to have been, you know, better protection of police formations and infrastructure. Why do you think that hasn't happened, or why do you think it's taken longer for us to be able to implement such a move?
Yes, you are right to say that there were indicators coming out from the fact that some of the police stations had earlier on been attacked. And that would have been a signal for all other formations in the Nigerian police to stand by and be at alert. Yeah, that happened, but you wouldn't know exactly where the next attack will be. But as it is, and like I told you, this thing don't just come from the blues. Remember that there has been issue of the NSAS, where people had the opportunity to vent their anger as a result of some of the issues that have cropped up between the police and the people or the public that the police. And that's why some of them got that hint and say, oh, we can do this. And so coming out from some of the destructive tendencies that happened during the NSAS that you know in Lagos, that properties were burnt, people were attacked. Coming out from there, it is possible that this other group would want to do likewise. And this has happened. The police, I am very sure that they've learned a lesson, because it was not to happen in any way, because it had happened in one of the states and is now happening in other states. I think the police are going back to the drawing board. I have been monitoring what exactly has been happening with the new Inspector General of Police. And he's been able to, you could see some of it at boss. You could see also that he had brought in those in operation and the head of admin, and that is the commissioners of police and their operations officers and the intelligence unit in the last 1 week. You know, giving them what exactly it is. They've been able to rehearse all that has happened. And I tell you that if there's any attempt, there's likely a possibility of a complete confrontation by the Nigerian police, because the police will never fall its arm and allow this thing to happen. But it's quite unfortunate, and I can tell you that we miss it somewhere, the police miss it somewhere for allowing this thing to have happened 1, 2, and 3. But I don't think they're going to have that again.
A few years ago, a newspaper did the hard work of collating just how many attacks have happened in the southeast of the country. Well, some parts of the south as well, but mostly in the southeast of the country. And at the last count, there were over 15 from January alone. Attacks on policemen who lost their lives, and attacks on police infrastructure as well, which we saw leading to the burning of cars and police stations, and the setting free of inmates, and in some instances, weapons being carted away. Yes. It's taken at least 4 months for us to be able to string whatever intelligence we're getting now together. Why is it so difficult for an institution like the police to be able to be swift in its response of how, you know, when it happens once, maybe twice, maybe once you called it an accident, maybe you were not sure, or an opportunistic crime. It happens a second time, it happens a third time, especially in 1 or 2 months. Why do you think it has taken so long for the police to be nimble in its response to such an aggression?
Yeah, I agree with you that it's not palatable. And I agree with you also that it has exposed some of the gap that we have in policing. And I think that is why the government formed an opinion, and the president of this country, you remember, he had to make a change of the leadership. I think that is a response. And that is an indication that the police must do something different. And that's why I'm telling you that I don't think this opportunity will be given to this criminal anymore to come in, because as much as I know, the police have that capacity to the deterrent of keeping these criminals out, and it is no longer a usual policing. It is now a big confrontation. And I think from what has happened these few days, any attempt to do exactly what has happened, I think the bandits are not going to go free at all.
What do you think, what exactly is the end game for those who have started this onslaught on the Nigeria police?
Yeah, you know, I also, while on serving, had opportunity to be around that area. I was commissioner of police in Abia during the IPOB. And a lot of them also would have been able to gather that they said that most of the policemen that they have, according to them, in the southeast are northern police and Fulani police. You can see ethnicity, and that they do not want to, to have them around, and that you don't want them. If you don't want them, then you could see also that they had the intention of releasing a lot of those IPOB and other criminals that were arrested with arms and have also used the arm either to take away lives and cause destruction. Illegal bearers, firearm bearers. A lot of them were mobbed up and they were put into detention, and they needed to take them out.
It's interesting that you say that, because increasingly they have been saying, no, we're not responsible for this. The ESN, the Eastern Security Network, which is the armed wing of IPOB, saying, no, we know nothing about these attacks. This is not us. Are we to dismiss that particular?
No, it's not true.
Should we take it on board?
No, they are finding an opportunity. Of course, they have to defend themselves. But I can tell you, I mean, investigation will show. But from what I have seen and what I've heard, it is true that they did what they did. They did that because in every situation, in every incident where they go to attack, the people they would want to release as the victims, are the suspect that are standing trial in cases of the IPOB, indigenous people of Biafra, struggle for independence and what have you. And so it's not possible for them to wriggle themselves out. And that argument does not stand.
Mm. Let me take you now to comments being credited to the governor of Kaduna State, where he has said, that all governors are on the same page that bandits be killed. Do you know if the Nigeria police had any other policy towards banditry before now?
Policy towards banditry? Banditry, that word is actually... We have to look at that word, because who is a bandit?
Or criminality.
Yes, I think when we talk about bandits, we're talking about those marauding firearms bearers, people who illegally acquire arms to commit crime. Not just to commit crime, but to terminate the lives of innocent citizens, to a large extent of making it impossible for government to perform its duty of protection of the citizen. And the first line of action and the institution that is responsible is the police. Is the police that will ensure the safety of individuals as per the 1999 Constitution. And so what we have seen, a criminal is a criminal. So the police should know. And the directive and the teaching and the position of the assignment of the police is that the police must make sure that those of them that are going armed and want to terminate people's lives, once you see somebody that is going armed and you've asked him to drop and he doesn't drop. In most of the operation that I went, I said, you should not wait for him to take your life. You cut off the hands and fling the gun away. You must demobilize him. You must get him out. Otherwise, a lot of people will go down with that arms that he's holding.
Mm. Let me flip this to Lagos now. I hear my colleagues have questions. Gentlemen.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mokwe. Mr. Abila, I mean, you said you've been in service in that area. And I just wonder, during service, did you witness anything as intense as this, successive attacks on police formations?
No. During that period, the members of the IPOB, with their leader, I have a lot of interaction with them. The Imam Powerful is the PRO, and they were a little bit calmer, and they hadn't then acquired arms, and it was not like this, but the projection that something like this would have happened. While I was there, yes, there was a lot of destruction because they could take over Aba town, they could take over Umma here, and other states, and then made life very, very difficult for members of the public. But there was nothing like this. But they've grown to a stage where they've resorted to the use of arms and taking away people's life and attacking the police. When you begin to attack police in this community or in a society or in a country like that, then there's a problem. And that should not be allowed. Anybody that is going armed must account for that arms, and not just going armed, but using that arms to attack police. I think that is too far a decision, and such people must pay the price dearly by also bringing them down.
I mean, I recall just yesterday reports came out of 70% of the arms, illegal arms in West Africa, in Nigeria alone. But you seem to be quite sure and certain that IPOB is responsible for these attacks. The former IGP also mentioned that. But listening to the governor of Imo State, for example, saying that, well, this is not about IPOB. He actually referenced aggrieved, disgruntled politicians as responsible. But should we be worried as Nigerians that, I mean, after 4 months of these attacks, the Nigeria Police Force has not been able to definitively, especially to be on the same page with the governors as to who is responsible for this? We've not heard that anybody has been prosecuted or anybody is in court as a result of these attacks. Should we be worried?
Yeah, we should be worried. But you know, too, that all governors are the head of their security agencies. It is very true that the governors are at liberty to sit with all security agencies, including the police and even the military, to put forward what exactly the security situation of such studies and how to tackle it. This, they have the freedom. They don't need to go to the IG. They don't need to go anywhere to do that. While we were in the States, the governors, those of them that are very interested in security will charge the way. And some of the programs that we implement in terms of providing security for people in the various states are suggested by the security and the military and all other security agencies and the apparatus of the government, the governor himself. Whatever we agreed, we implement. So it is very true that the government are at liberty, you know, to think that way. But a lot of intelligence, I'm sure, at the disposal of security practitioners and the Nigerian police is that it is those people who are agitating for one thing or the other, who wants their country, who also wants something to be done. Those of them may be out of job. Those of them with these challenges, you can't really profile who they are. But they tend to use this platform of the IPOB because in each of these attacks in these facilities of the Nigerian police, you find them advancing to release some of the people that were earlier on arrested. And some of them that we have seen are those that were arrested during the activities of the IPOB, the activities of what have you. And that's why we're situating it that way. If there's any other one, I'm sure it will rear its head. But I think the police have learned a lesson, and they're going to draw a line. And from what I picked from them, they won't let that free. Anybody who does that, I think they will be able to match force for force.
You know, matching force for force perhaps is instructive at this time because there are people who have had pointing accusing fingers at the police for being part of the causative factors to the general insecurity happening in different parts of the country. And they adduce their reasons that in some cases where they say persons who have been attacked by killer headsmen reported the matter to them, but they usually tell them either you drop the matter. Usually don't get encouraging response, but I understand we need to go to break now. But we'll come back to let you respond in just a moment. Stay with us.
In relation to Nigeria police under my leadership, our policy vision is to restore police primacy in the internal security architecture of the country by doing the following things. 1. Engaging cutting-edge policing technology and integrate intelligence-led policing practices to our functions with a view to strengthening our capacity to stabilize the internal security, restore order and public confidence in the force. 2. Giving full effect to the concept of community policing and deliver quality police service that will be guided by the principles of public accountability and conformity with the rule of law. 3. Taking the lead in strengthening interagency collaboration and embrace the social content of policing in which police officers see themselves as compassionate servants and helpers of the citizen and offer community services support to citizens in distress as well as vulnerable groups.
So, Mr. Abela, when you say what you picked from the police, that now they are of the impression that they will not let this happen again, and many will think, so why didn't they come up with this posture for a long time now? Because many think that usually they look the other way when killer headsmen carry out their attacks. Because, I mean, there's an instruction that the agencies have to shoot at sight anyone who's seen bearing unauthorized arms.
Yes, I agree with you. That's why you see that there's a change. The Inspector General of Police, they just spoke, is the one that have just come in. And you could see that what he was doing was like reading a riot act. Number one, he also addressed the issue of the police that they must be able to prepare themselves and avoid doing things that will attract disenchantment from members of the public. There are a lot of things that has been happening in the past that the police also have been able to, have not been able to address. And that's what he's saying, that the police must make sure that all those vices, practices of arrest of people and abuse of rights and extortion and what have you by all these bad elements in the police should stop. And you saw that he was very, very passionate about the fact that the people must be protected. Because by the time you begin to bring down police officers and their equipment,
so Mr. Abela,
you're trying to create a banana stick.
Part of what I did say was,
not let go.
When you say you agree with me, does that mean that you agree that for those who think that the police have not been up and doing when it comes to addressing or meeting force with force concerning killer headsmen?
Yeah, you know, the law does not permit officers just to see people who have committed crime, you've not investigated, and you have opportunity of getting him without really, really demobilizing him or killing him. The law says you should preserve lives. And that's why, as much as possible, police avoid the issue of bringing down people. They have the capacity to bring down criminals. Criminals you've not been able to investigate. And that's why they're very, very careful about, you know, approaching criminals and not really bringing them down at once until the situation is assessed. And so people will expect that when you see people gathering and are armed and that you don't need to ask questions, you spray them. That is not tenable. But police have learned their lesson, that whoever that is going armed and they have been asked to drop, and he has not dropped, and he's not allowed, he's not one of those, he's not a security official, must be brought down.
Well, we have to thank you for your thoughts this morning. Mr. Joshak Habila is a former DIG, that's the Deputy Inspector General of Police Operations. Well, that's why we have to leave it for Sunrise Daily this wonderful Wednesday morning, but not before we take your comments. Looking at a few here now, Andrew Alola says, as normal as it seems in Nigeria, seeing the judiciary embarking on strike is one of the pathetic anomalies in the entity Nigeria. That's what Andrew has to say.
All right, the next tweet comes through now from, what? Wow, that's a long name, Blue Diamond. Well, it says, I'm so much worried about the impudence of most political leaders in Nigeria regarding obeying the Constitution of Nigeria. Until the judiciary has been the third arm of government, or being the third arm of government, is separated from the shackles of the executives, true federalism will not be seen. Well, Blue Diamond, you need to slow down so they can get some of this. It almost confused us now.
Okay, Henry says the diseases afflicting our judiciary are mainly those they exist to cure in the society. The foul-smelling ooze is expressed as a multi-sectoral failure in our national life. Who will bail the cat, he says.
I guess the cat is running loose at this time. Well, this one is from Dr. Ekwemosa, who says, not just financial autonomy. Independence of the judiciary also requires administrative and operational autonomy. To achieve these, we need to reimagine the entire legal framework of the justice system in Nigeria.
And Comrade Dari has this one. Aside the executive arm of government, no other arms of government or no other arm of government is independent in Nigeria. If judiciary were to be what it was designed to be, the president will not be the one appointing heads of judiciary. That's what Comrade Dari feels. I also hear that we've got some breaking news, pretty disturbing one. Gentlemen.
This is Channels Television's breaking news.
Well, news getting to us indicate that gunmen have attacked a private university in Kaduna at the moment. And some students have been kidnapped. Yeah, so gunmen attacked a private university in Kaduna, and some of the students there have been kidnapped. So we're keeping tabs on that matter, and we'll get to you a lot more as we get them. So you need to keep tabs on this one. So gunmen attacking a private university in Kaduna. So this comes in spite of all of those actions that have been taken. Remember, some are still in custody who they're trying to release. The government says that their policy, no negotiating with bandits. And this morning, they unanimously agree on killing of all bandits and terrorists ascribed to the governor of Kaduna State. So with this breaking news, it raises more questions. But we'll bring you more as we get them here at Channels. But that is the show today. We thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Oso.
I'm Kayode Kikulu.
I'm Ayamakide. Have a good day.
Okwe Ogun Yusuf. Do stay safe.